Most people think Hollywood makes money when a movie is successful. That sounds obvious, right? You sell tickets, you earn money, you celebrate. But here's the part that should make you pause for a second. Some of the most successful movies in history are officially labeled as financial failures. Yes, billion-dollar movies. Movies you've watched. Movies with sequels, spin-offs, merchandise, and theme park rides. On paper, they lost money. Now stop and think about this for a moment. If a movie earns $1 billion and still loses money, then what exactly is Hollywood selling? Because it clearly isn't movies. We grow up believing a very simple story about how Hollywood works. You buy a ticket, the studio gets richer, the actors get paid, everyone wins, it feels fair, it feels logical, it feels like capitalism doing its job. But that version only exists because it's easy to understand. Hollywood's real business model is intentionally difficult to understand because the confusion is profitable. And once you see the real system, you start noticing something strange. Hollywood doesn't behave like an industry trying to make great movies. It behaves like an industry that trying to move money without triggering obligations. Here's the first question most people never ask. Why would a studio ever want a movie to look unprofitable? If profit is good, why do studios work so hard to erase it? The answer is simple and uncomfortable. Profit creates responsibilities. Profit means taxes. Profit means royalty payments. Profit means honoring contracts that say you get a percentage. Losses, on the other hand, are peaceful. Losses don't demand explanations. Losses don't require payouts. Which is why Hollywood perfected a system where success exists, but profit does not. Hollywood uses something called Hollywood accounting, and despite how shady it sounds, it's completely legal. Here's how it works in simple words. A movie earns $1 billion. Instead of calling that profit, the studio starts subtracting costs. Not just real costs, but flexible ones. Marketing, subtracted. Distribution, subtracted. Studio overhead, subtracted. Internal fees paid to itself, subtracted. By the time the math is finished, the movie hasn't made money. It has underperformed. Now ask yourself this: if a studio controls the expenses and the studio defines the profit, then who decides whether success even exists? Exactly. This is where the system stops being funny and starts being uncomfortable. Actors, writers, and creators are often promised back-end deals, meaning they'll receive a percentage of the profits. But remember, in Hollywood accounting, profit is optional. That's why you hear stories of writers receiving tiny checks from movies that reshaped pop culture. That's why actors from billion-dollar franchises talk openly about being underpaid. So here's a question worth thinking about. If the people who create the value don't benefit from the success, then who does? Hollywood does not make money from movies. Hollywood makes money from ownership. The movie is just a tool, a very expensive advertisement for intellectual property. Characters, universes, brands, and franchises are the real assets. The moment a character becomes recognizable, it can generate money in ways that have nothing to do with ticket sales. Toys, licensing, games, spin-offs, streaming deals, and merchandise that exists long after the movie is forgotten. This raises an interesting question. If the movie itself can fail and the business still wins, was the movie ever the product? This is why Hollywood loves franchises, not because they're creative, not because audiences demand them, but because the franchises are predictable. Original ideas are risky, but existing intellectual property is safe. When a studio owns a universe, it doesn't need creativity, it needs maintenance. That's why reboots exist. That's why sequels happens even when nobody asked. That's why originality struggles to survive. And once you see this, you can't unsee it. Streaming was supposed to democratize entertainment. Instead, it made Hollywood accounting invisible. Streaming platforms don't release real numbers. There are no ticket sales, no public benchmarks, which means creators can't verify success or failure. Only the platform can. Ask yourself this: how do you negotiate fair payment when the performance data belongs to the company that paying you? This question is why strikes happen and why they keep happening. Here's another layer people rarely think about. Hollywood doesn't just sell movies to audiences, it sells productions to governments. Countries offers tax breaks, cities pay studios to film there, governments subsidize production costs. So sometimes a movie is already profitable before it even releases. Ticket sales become secondary, public reaction becomes optional. Now consider this: if a movie is financially safe before release, who is it really made for? You've probably noticed this before and never questioned it. Movies that flop still get sequels. Universes continue despite poor reviews. Studios double down on failure. That's because the movie didn't fail. It just didn't entertain you. From a business perspective, the system already worked, which leads to a bigger, more uncomfortable question. Are movies designed for audiences or for balance sheets? Once you understand this model, you start seeing it everywhere. So the next time someone says, Hollywood makes money from movies, you'll know the truth.